Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant. It is a compilation of one of the ongoing plotlines of my fan fictions that are used to explore and demonstrate the setting of Warhammer 40k. The grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. I do use musical themes, so often you will find the same tracks in each entry on one of these videos. But do bear in mind that these are musical prompts, for often the stories can be weeks apart in their continuation. So I feel the music kind of eases someone back into the storyline and the mood. Many an entry is the result of a vote, as I will leave many a tale on a cliffhanger, and then get the gentle listeners to forge the narrative by voting in the comments, so they can control the direction and events of the story. So, if you enjoy any of these stories, then do watch the weekly entries on the guides and prepare to exert your own influence and vote on the storylines. Now, I very much hope you enjoy the following compilation. We were holding. We did everything we could. We tried everything we could. We did our duty. This is what they will say of us. That is what they will know. That we fought and we tried. We did our duty. But none can understand what we are up against. None can know the horrors that lurk in the darkness of the void. And every last one of them wants to either wipe us out, consume us, or dominate us. It is not a nice galaxy. And right now, I have no idea how the Ultramarines did it, or the Blood Angels, or any of the Emperor's Angels of Death, the Astartes. How did they beat these monsters? Because every time we think we have them on the run, every time we think they simply cannot take any more, simply cannot have any more armies to throw at us, up and on comes another. And every single time they attack in a different way, more subtle or cunning way, avenues we have never considered, alleys we may have missed, places we thought unassailable. So, here I am. One of the last of my entire battle group, the 2,334th Landragore Rifles. We've been pushed back from the defences again and again. What was once a massive fortification that was touted to be even more impregnable than even fabled wracks. Now, we are pushed back to the last lines, the last defences. Huge walls with shielding, massive guns that tear rents into the earth when we fire them. Everything within meters of the blasts are burnt to a crisp or simply evaporated. Yet still they come on. We must have smashed hundreds of thousands of them, perhaps millions. Yet on they come. But at the present there seems to be no point to it. We know that they are not mere animals, as I said. They are cunning and directed. There is definitely something far smarter than I am behind these tsunamis of flesh that crash against us again and again. Yet they are barely making it to the middle of what people are now calling no man's land. The areas between the final walls and the preceding outer defences. No man's land, as it is clearly theirs. We can hear them chittering and scratching and eating in the night. We know they are taking our dead, our brothers and sisters, all of humanity that stayed and stood and lost their lives in defiance of these things. They are taking our dead and eating them, making more of their own number. It is the only way this is possible. So many of them. And the thought makes us all want to vomit. There was talk of sorties into the dark to prevent them from gaining our dead. Such rage had been invoked by the thought of their perfidy, their using our own against us, the dishonour of their memory. But the commissars put a stop to that when the second sorties did not return. We heard them all, screaming in the night, dying to a man. We had fed our enemies more flesh, more material. So the commissars, who are usually so full of wrath and zeal, even they said it was a waste of fighting men, that we needed to reserve every ounce of our strength for the defence of our walls. And so we did. The prayers to the Emperor seemed to be getting more desperate with each hour. The sermon's more fiery, yet there seems to be a despair even amongst the clerics. I think they know nobody is coming to save us, that we are doomed. For their sermons now surround sacrifice and everlasting glory at the side of the Emperor, meaning that they know we are already dead. Now it's just a matter of how long we can hold out. If we can hold out long enough, make the bugs pay for every inch of ground, every second, then maybe our sacrifice will allow other planets to be saved, that we fight, so the Imperium can muster its forces in defence. Cold comfort, if I am honest. But it's something. As dawn breaks across the horizon, the golden light of our star warms my face as I look down. I stand on the battlements, taking the last pleasure I have in the world, watching the bugs burn. They cannot get past our last batteries. I see larger and larger beasts arrive. None mattered against the burning lances we fire down. Nothing. And for a second, I begin to believe again. A pity. For that is when it happens. I hear a rumble from below, which means that it must be almost deafening down on the ground. The very battlements and crenellations of the last skirting walls are shuddering, so large is the disruption. I skid from watching the outside to the far wall and look down on our courtyard and open ground, where our men muster before the last walls, when the walls were to be breached. Mostly made up of assault units, our last reserves, our last formations. And panic is loosed amongst them when the rumbling reaches its crescendo, and finally the cause is made horrifically clear. Across the entire inner area, large holes begin to fall in, and out of them crash a cornucopia of Tyranid bioforms. Huge things with heads and jaws so large they could probably swallow an Ogrin hull, if not a Lehman Russ tank. Hundreds of their many-armed killers, the ones that move in packs, and their claws rip through armour and sinew like it was paper. And the butchery begins. Assault platoons, though they are, armed with flamers and melters and ready for a scrap. They are no match for the ferocity of the fray, the confusion that is rife. And they keep coming. Their gaunts, the smaller ones, coming out behind the many-armed killers and filling the area with their horrible bullet bugs, the ones that bore into you and eat you from the insides out. I look down and want to weep. Our guns all point outwards. We could not fire them down in the courtyards even if we wanted to. They do not swivel 180 degrees, you see. So all we can do is watch. I see a knot or two of resistance standing proud. Many have commissars at their centre. Others have the weird Venom Primera Psychers at their core. The Psychers making short work of the Nids as they swarm at them. It is then that I see the end of all things. Doom made flesh. For out of the holes now hover packs of nightmarish things, all head and no body. They float like they are magical. And before them everyone runs. I see a commissar break down and weep, while his unit scatters away from these things. A commissar weeping. Only one thing can explain this. The warp. They sail our men everywhere, terrorising them, breaking them. Where there are psychers of our own, the units do not break, but they still die. These things, these brain balloons, simply all fire lances of power beams of psychic energy that burn our men in exactly the same way that our macro lasers burn through theirs. Like lines of power that can cut and burn everything in front of them. They hone in on the last centres of resistance and burn everything and everyone. It is over. I can see them, various types gaining entrance to the bottoms of the walls. They're entering. They're coming. I look down the line at each and every man and woman in uniform, with eyes wide and jaws dropped. I look to a box of grenades and take it. I run across the walkway towards the entrance to our section, the winding stairs that will be their entry point. Everyone is just watching, stunned. But then I realise they are affected too. These things are sending waves of horror and fear up at us, paralysing us. But not me. I will do all I can. I am resigned, you see. I will buy my squad time, but will die. So they cannot scare me. Not from this distance. I pelt down the stairs as fast as my legs would carry me, holding the box of grenades. Frag. Nice. This should do it. I reach a choke point, a small landing with murder holes all around its outsides. I then wait for them. As the first one of them dives into the room, they see a small, squishy human. A meal. But they probably do not clock the things in my hands or mouth, the ticking sounds. I will not be a meal, nor will they use this entry point. My squad will last a few more minutes, maybe an hour if they can hold. And that is one more hour for our forces across 1,000,000 worlds of the Imperium to get off their backsides and do something. I grin around the grenade as I pull out all 3 pins, dropping one into the crate. Ha! For the Emperor. May the wisdom of Puretide be with us, the cunning of Shadow Sun, for we need it. Have we not endured enough already? I recall the Kerata since it all began. A Bentusi flotilla was passing and warned us of the first danger, the Begale. The bellicose ones, green, angry, belligerent. They will never know the light of the greater good. They came in their meteor. It slammed into our planet and laid its lush gardens, its rolling prairies, mostly waste. Yet somehow, impossibly, millions of the Begales survived the impact, and then they poured from the crash site like a tsunami of rage and hate. We fought them long, and we fought them hard, fought them for our world. But that was just the beginning. For while the Begale still roamed our planet's surface, our very skies darkened, and the Yehe, the ever-devouring, started to fall out of the skies as numerous as drops of rain. I stand behind our tide wall shield line. The drone ports, the gun rigs reach as far as the eye can see. It has been Rota since our last contact with either. The Begale had tried to take this city so many times, but each time we beat them back. The massed fire from our KV-128s, the storm surges, destroyed their vehicles before they got near. Our gun rigs and drones did much to slow them, to punish their hordes. We dropped the protective fields of the shear line, and our ranked lines of fire warriors fired, then raised them again. Down, fire, up again. Down, fire, up again. Sometimes when they finally withdrew, there were mounds of them. I will never understand them, their sheer rage. How they were willing to keep charging at our lines of ordered fire, no matter how many of them we killed, no matter how little they actually did to us. It is, utterly insane. They value no other life, as so many of the beings we have encountered in a galaxy we now know to be so dark and terrible. This had gone on for nearly half a cycle all across our world. But the Begale seem not to value even their own lives. For with each wave, I saw that they were getting closer. And one day I knew that there would be more green-skinned lunatics attacking us than our lines could annihilate. And on that day I feared that they would simply wash over us and sweep us all away in carnage and blood. Perhaps that would have happened soon. But then, as I said, the skies darkened. The monsters from the void, the Yehe, who the Gwelar called the Tyranids, Vasa once told me. They landed all over our world, but we had the firepower to keep them from landing in our major conurbations. Hence they were forced to compete with the Begale, outside in the wastes and valleys, and what remained of the forests. We didn't really know what was happening. Our shields and firepower cleansed the skies whenever the monsters attacked, either of them. But any of our attempts to send out scouting craft, either by land or by air, they met the same fate. We never saw them again. So we just held, and waited, and worried. The Corvatra, our navy, could be on its way, could be here at any time. So all we could do was sit behind our walls and turrets, and wait. Wait for deliverance. There was no way of knowing what would happen next. No tactic we could have employed, no preparations we could have made. The worst of it, the thing I will never forget if I lived through this. I know it will haunt me to the end of my days. Their laughter, the way they seemed to love it so much. They were actually happy when the horror got worse. The green ones, the Begel, are mad. The dawn was bright, yet there was no warmth. Our world was colder, now that the dust from the impact had choked much of our atmosphere since the meteor hit. Today was especially cold, especially overcast. The ash was like snow, languidly drifting down on us all that day. We stood, being slowly dusted with it. Rank on rank of us, as always, stood behind the tired wall shield lines. We could well be the last of our kind on the planet. We could not tell. The interference in the atmosphere could have choked our communications as it did our breathing. But I am FireClan. I know how to fight. I do not know the technicalities of these things. Perhaps we were all that remained. Perhaps not. But it made no difference. Not today. None could help us. We knew that they were coming. We could hear them. We could see the wake of dust and ash that they threw up as they approached. Roaring buggies, makeshift trucks and tanks, and odd stomping parodies of battlesuits that belched their own ash and soot into the air. And the same affray as we had fought a score of times began again. But there were more of them. Many, many more of them. My fears played out before my eyes. As always, they just charged. Our gun rigs fired. Our KV-128s, the storm surges, fired. Huge plumes of flame and smoke went up from their vehicles. Lines of the Begel fell and joined the carpet of them up to the approach. Yet on they charged. When they came within range, our tired wall shield lines went down, and we fired, then went up to block their return fire. We had performed the same route, the same drill as before, but I could see it was not the same this time. As organized as we were, as accurate as we were, as calm as we were, there was no escaping the truth. There were too many of them. Trucks and their battlesuit parodies eventually reached our lines, careening out of control or suicidally slamming into the struts. But across the entire front, they managed to break, shoot, destroy, or demolish our tide wall lines. The shields fell. Still we stood. We fired in lines upon lines of them. The 3-line stand was used, and we knelt, stood, and lay, and firing all we could, but not able to waste even one shot. So many were they. Even then, I think we could have held them. Maybe. But that is when the horror came in earnest. For the ground rumbled, and we had thought it was merely from the amount of Begel, their massive war machines all trampling towards us, their cadence enough to make the ground shake. But it was not. In 3 sectors simultaneously, the ground erupted. I was only 50 paces from where one came up. It was like the Begel had used their mad magicians to make the earth attack us. We had seen stranger things from them. The huge green feet smashing down on segments of our lines, only to be filled immediately by our reserves. But it was not. For the eruptions of earth had things in their midst. A huge Yehe in each. Its mighty maws, its incredible jaws, came up and entire teams disappeared into them. But they simply did not submerge back into the ground. They slithered out, towering over our units, using their mighty tails to smash aside our battlesuits. They moved so fast. Our lines folded, as we could not all fire at the Begel, but had to fire at the huge monsters in our midst. It was as if the Begel and Yehei had made common cause, because the Begel cheered at the arrival of the things. My mind rebelling, I looked around to see our demise. I kept firing, but they were still so thick I could not miss. It was then that I saw. There were many other things coming out all around the battlefield. The huge-mouthed ones, yes, but others, equally towering, but smaller mouths, more powerful in their mighty claws. More things coming out of them to kill and slay. They were equally terrible, but left cavernous holes that our units and the Begel fell into, but none came out. What did come out were hordes unending of the Yehei, the Tyranids. They're smaller ones, with hands that fired worms that bored into your flesh, the ones of teeth and fang that ripped all apart, with their scything talons and rending claws. We fell back again and again. The Begel and Yehei were not working together. They fell on each other and ignored us as we drew back. This is how I can make this report, how I can make this recording. For as we stand behind the last line of our shield walls, before me is a scene from a waking hell. Green-skinned Begel charge around the battlefield that was once our outer defensive grounds. They rush towards the Yehei, with joy, abandon, a bellowed laugh carrying out of them. They are enjoying this. How? The Yehei are tearing them to pieces, but one on either side falls to the hands or teeth, claws or choppers of the other. I cannot look away. And I know when either of them, or both of them, or the ones that win this bloodbath as we now stand and watch, when they turn their eyes on us again, I am not sure we can stop them. But then, at the rate they are slaughtering each other, there may not actually be any need. Kovatra, where are you? Pandemonium. It's become pandemonium and I don't trust anything or anyone anymore. One day, one night, and the entire world I knew was turned on its head. Nothing makes sense anymore. I have to admit, I am drowning in it all, and I am a colonel. I dread to think what this is all doing to the men, but I can see it in their eyes, the way they move, the frantic looks they all give me. Holy Throne. I never thought I would say this, but I wish I had a regiment or two of Krieg here now. I never enjoyed fighting alongside those fanatics. Not a brain cell between them. Just zeal and an insane wish to sacrifice themselves at any damned opportunity. But the Emperor only knows how I could use that kind of steel now. On my own world. Or at least the world I thought was my own. But it isn't my world anymore. It's theirs. We are holding on by our fingertips, but that is it. We can't make any headway. Every time I think, surely, they can't want more. There can't be any more of them. And they arrive on the skyline. People I knew, from places I loved. Hordes of them. We have been protecting the spaceport since it began. Protected as it is with a mountain at our backs, it is the perfect defensive location. Or so I thought. So its designers and builders thought. Now it is a death trap and I feel like a rat in a cage. I, an officer of the Emperor's own Astra Militarum, with over 4 decades of experience fighting across some of the most desolate hellscapes, across the most barbarous death worlds. I am out of ideas. On the very first night they seemed to arrive from nowhere, be connected to everyone. No institute, organization or unit was safe from their infiltration. I can only imagine that my unit was still pure due to having only just returned in the last week from our campaigns. We're awaiting reinforcements, before being sent out to another war, another opportunity to serve the Imperium. We thought we would have a few months of R&R, well earned, I will state right now. That last engagement saw 40% casualties in my battle group, but we did it. We smashed the insurgents. But it was only days before this all started. Mere days. So, for a week or more we have been met with the same thing each morning, most nights. Hordes of them are unending, despite our clear superiority in reaping them like wheat in a thresher. They keep coming. Barely armed, barely able to fight. Construction workers and civilians. They just charge our lines, no matter how many of them are cut down by our ordered fire, no matter the mounds of bodies that now litter the landscape before our walls. Still they come. I have seen orcs break before this level of slaughter. Seen Xenos, who knew we would hunt them down and exterminate their entire races, fight with less fervour, less desperation, less sheer ignorance of how little they are actually doing to our positions. Still they come. But my men are on the verge of imploding. I know this. We have all the ammunition we could ever wish for, as our resupply was at the port, ready for us to take to the next campaign. Why don't we simply get into a ship and leave, you may ask? Why not? Well, it's very simple. 1, this is my home. 2, they, whatever they are, have control of the defense grid. The instant we take to high altitude, they will blow us out of the skies. I know this, as it is exactly what happened only 3 days ago. A fast ship, one piloted by one of my best, went up, but soon came down in a ball of flames. Musing over. I look at the auspex and see that they are coming again. Men, women, children. All our previous families, friends, neighbours. Eyes glazed and faces twisted in rage. They simply charge our lines. I give the order and the firing begins again. Some of my troops are taking aim and then closing their eyes when they fire. They do not wish to see the moment their actions cut families apart. None of it makes any sense. Once, just once, I thought I saw something in our scopes. Just that once. A thing. It moved too fast for a human. It had multiple arms. And even at the range we are at, looking at it made me feel someone was tap dancing on my grave, like a shadow death to come. But death not only of me, but all humanity. I'd seen it fleetingly, but it was unmistakably Xenos. The things behind this travesty. They want access to the port. I know it. From here they can then expand across the stars, but they will have to get through us to do it. What the hell was that? What the hell is happening? It feels like rain, hail. Something is hitting the platform, something from above. My screen dies as something hits the auspex arrays. I am blind. I cannot contact my troops, cannot direct them. My entire staff are now agog and on the verge of panic. I must control the situation through action, give them something to concentrate on. I walk to the hatch and take my pistol out. My guards nervously array themselves behind me. The entire staff look on. I twist the hatch as the hail seems to speed up. I push the hatch open just enough to see, but close it again instantly. The sight would break my men. I know this because I have to control every instinct in me to stay calm. The training of the Schola Progenium kicks in, but that is it. I control myself. But all of my training does not yield me any answer. What did I see? What is the hail? My eyes did not focus immediately, going from the dusk of the comms room to the dazzling glare of the outside. But when it did, I saw it. Red. Everything was red. The hail, the thumps. They are not boulders. They are not weapons. They are people. It is raining. People. They have climbed the mountain behind us and are throwing themselves off. They are leaping to their deaths, just so they can attempt to land on our gun emplacements, our communications arrays, our lines. They are now burying our lines. I cannot now destroy the port from here with my headquarters cut off. We have only one option left. I salute my fine men and women, the brothers and sisters I have been told to lead, and I do so one more time. I show them the way. My pistol enters my mouth and I angle it up, so as to make it instant. Continued from Tactical Marines and Ultramarines videos. Today. It's been 150 years today. I can still remember the shocked look on Marcus's face, the puce grimace on Quintus's, so long ago. The day I was told I was to be promoted to the ranks of the battle companies. The bawling out that old Rufus gave both of them, but I felt just as emasculated and chided by. Ah, Rufus, how I miss him. We lost him during the invasion, you see. After the avenging son arose to lead the Imperium once again. He would have liked that, Rufus, to have seen that. Our Primarch amongst us once again. A pity. But he went the way he would have wanted to go, bolter in hand, bringing the wrath of the Emperor down on his enemies. He was found surrounded by a dozen traitors, inside a score or more of cultists. Like a flower, with him at its centre, each petal a victim of his skill. A tableau in testament to his courage, his valour, his tenacity. Picts were taken and distributed. It was one of the main images of the engagement. We won. The cost had been high, but we paid it. With brave souls like Rufus and so many others, we paid it. And evil was thrust back into the pits of hell, and sanity and righteousness prevailed. But that day, so long ago, we still laugh about it even now, Marcus, Quintus and I. We gravitated to the same company, fate throwing us back together after almost a century fighting amongst other brothers, under different banners. I was made captain finally. Marcus was attached to my company via his Stern Guard squad, and Quintus via his vanguard. Both had been offered promotion and denied it, for the time. Both truly loved their roles, you see. As Rufus himself identified all those years ago, they liked to be in the thick, in the fire and thunder, so neither strove for the rank I had attained. We would enjoy at least a decade in this formation, if all went well. That was what we thought then. But it has been 50 years now. The wars have been long, the active theatres and placements short. We have been busy. Busier, I think, than the Ultramarines have been for a very long time. Not that we were ever sluggards, though. It is just that we presently live in very interesting times. Of the many engagements we have had of late, the many pleas for assistance answered, the many worlds saved from the grip of tyranny, the many enemies faced and bested, all I can say is, there is never a dull moment. One posting, it will be hunting raiders and brigands plying the warplanes, camping on the Mandeville points, looking for easy prey. The next it will be fighting legions of the metal monstrosities, the ones that must be killed again and again before they get the point, before they know they are outmatched. The next will be against the green-skinned scum who infest so much of the universe. The next will be hurling back yet another incursion from the warp, be it traitor marines or the Neverborn. The cost is always high. But this engagement is not against any of them, not mutant, marauder, or mastermind. It is against the hive fleets. It is against the Tyranids. I know this. I was there. I know how to defeat them. We were on our way to a small world called Abundance Tertius, as directed by Malneus Calgar himself. To represent, he said. But if we are representing the Ultramarines, then we shall be as Ultramarines. We will act with honour, we will show the way. En route, we dropped out of warp at the Mandeville point to regain our bearings, to confirm them at least, when the astropathic choir received a piteous wail from a nearby world. We jumped. We assessed. We acted. The splinter of the Hive Fleet was small, a scouting element mayhap, so it was manageable. We are the Marines of the Avenging Sun, so we did some avenging. I ordered our battle barge and cruisers into the midst of them, and they felt the hand of the Emperor on them that day. With every volley, with every broadside, with every boarding action, we repelled. It was over in 6 hours. We smashed their bioships in detail, then we turned our attention to the events below. Long had they been on this world. Long had they fought and killed, and were on the verge of victory. We had to strike decisively, or fail. The clusters of swarms had 3 prongs, but ever was one the largest, the one that was coordinating the others. This is where it would be. The hive tyrant that many called the subjugator. Well, that is the polite sobriquet. If I am not mistaken, then we have met before. I look down at my left hand, now metal not only on the outside. The ceramite gauntlets of the Astartes, the Space Marine. No. For inside the metal sheath there is my replacement bionic, my metal hand. Whenever I think of the subjugator, I can still hear the ticking of the grenade I placed in its mouth. Well, placed it by allowing it to bite off a good section of my arm. Tick, tick, tick. But this time would not be like the last, not even close, because the confrontation is of a different form. I met with the biologus. He explained it to me in graphic and hard data. There becomes a point when an infestation from the Tyranid takes hold. When that has happened, when its organisms permeate the planet and its entire ecosystem, then the world is doomed. The levels on this world were dangerously close. The tipping point had already been passed, really. So it was a rescue mission, not one of defense. This is the sort of thing Marcus and Quintus wish to avoid. Too much information. Too many decisions that have nothing to do with target acquisition or priority. No steel on steel. Just hard choices. With lightning alacrity, I arranged for our escort ships to prepare to take on refugees and begin to send their transports down to the surface to evacuate the populace. I ordered our storm talons and stormhawks and speeder contingents to harry the flanks of the swarms, to direct them away from the extraction points. But the subjugator did not wish all of this juicy biomass, our people, to leave the planet. So it strikes. The main thrust comes on like a bull, aimed directly at the largest spaceport, the one from which the majority of our activity is based. There are thousands of people waiting in lines, slowly shuffling onto transports. If the bugs get past us, it will be a massacre. So we move. A well-oiled machine, my one order sets off a chain of events that makes me proud. Of my men, their dedication, their discipline. Our storm ravens take off, my men on board. A spirit of shots erupt from the battle barge, followed by a set of torpedo-like objects slamming down to where the fire exploded, to where we are going. The small town of Vautreil. It sprawls in every direction, covering most of this basin, and will be the site of the battle. We approach, and I stand behind the pilot, viewing the tactical displays. The main swarm is coming. He has accepted my challenge again. Before we even touch down, the doors open and my men begin to drop out and take defensive positions. In front of them are a hammer-full bunker and 2 Deathstorm drop pods, the missiles I mentioned earlier, perfectly placed to cover the huge rents in the earth and burning open ground created by our bombardment. I have created a killing field, brought the best firepower to cover us. But we dare not just bludgeon this continent with orbital firepower, or the spaceport may be destroyed or rendered useless, and that would condemn every man, woman and child to a horrific demise. Our storm ravens take off and move to the rear, but within a safe distance to be on call for an immediate extraction. We disperse amongst the buildings. Only a few avenues have been rent by imprecise fire. Bombardment is never as accurate as one would hope. but it was as precise as it gets. The majority of our half of the city is left standing, for cover, for vantage points. This cannot be an exercise in endurance. They would prevail. All I can do is hope he accepts the challenge and, by taking his mind off his campaign, even for a few hours, that I can get our people out. We do not have to wait long, and I am not disappointed. They are here before we really detect them. Our first indicant of their proximity is the fire erupting from the Hammerfall bunker. Its superfrag missiles speeding off from it across the city in well-balanced conservative fire patterns. It has been programmed thus at my request. We can see and hear the explosions coming closer and closer, the Tyranids being bled all of the way. Then they are unmistakable. A huge screech goes off and the entire horizon explodes into movement. But my men are ready. I am ready. Surrounded by Marines like me, but larger. I take no risks this day. My own force is made up of only those who wear Gravis armor. 2 squads of heavy intercessors and aggressors, and 1 of centurions. Our firepower will be overwhelming this day, especially as Marcus has kitted out his stern guard with many a heavy weapon to supplement the firepower we already have. Quintus waits in the rear, ready for my word. He is to be my spear tip when the time is right. I shall plunge he and his vanguard veterans with their supporting assault intercessors into the heart of the enemy. And they come. Waves as gaunt as far as the eye can see. Our heavy intercessors rip them to shreds at longer range than even they are used to from bolter weapons. And when some manage to get through, using the city's remains or sewers to come up closer, the aggressors do their work. With bolters and flamers they clear the immediate area whenever a swarm gets through. But the battle quickly escalates. A cluster of carnifexes barges its way through the lesser beings and charges our lines. The heavy bolter arrays on the Hammerfall tear many apart, but not all. The fire from the drop pods ends as the ammunition runs dry, the barrels of its weapons burning red hot and steaming, but rotating without disgorging any more death now. Quintus and his stern guard fire precise shots, one after another. Balls of plasma, missiles, all hit the oncoming carnifexes and end them. Not always on the first shot, but eventually. None make it fully to our lines, and it is then that I see him, standing aside, watching. It can be no other than he. The height, the markings, the many arms, the glare with too much sentience in it. It is he. And he is out in the open, it seems, skulking close to the front, directing as I am. But he is there.
Quintus, it's time. Engage!
At that one word, 20 intercessors leap up and charge through our lines, precisely opened by alternate men stepping sideways. As always, we act as one. The whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. The chainswords of the intercessors scream their challenge to the skies as they barrel forward, cutting swathes through the remaining gaunts. I direct fire, my aggressors taking the flanks of the charge by moving forward at either side, covering the charge. My intercessors fire into the sides as well, creating a channel, a bridge of open air that the assault squads pour through. They need only carve their way to their target. But again, this is but a distraction, a way of creating another extraction alley, a bridge. For the true hammer now falls, Quintus and his veterans. Armed with a collection of rare and magnificent weapons of worth, they bound over us on wings of fire, as their jump packs force them into the air and in an arc to land before the beast himself, the subjugator. The building which it skulks near is removed from the picture, as I direct Marcus and his veterans to take out the keystones and bring it down. It is done cleanly, calmly, and swiftly. With the building coming down, the Hive Tyrant is almost clear to us all now. We get to see the confrontation. It becomes clearer and clearer as the dust and smoke are blown away. And it is not good viewing. Quintus and his 4 brothers slam down before it, but are almost immediately on the defensive instead of the attack. The Tyrant towers over most of the lesser beings, but now all it has to do is stoop and it is covered. As in front of it are a wall of huge beasts, not the size of carnifexes, not that large, but much heavier than warriors or gaunts. They are much taller and wider than even a Primaris. The shoulders, torsos, and front of their legs are covered in a thick, dark, armoured chitin. Armour so thick and of a form never have I seen before on a Tyranid. For even bolter shells are bouncing off them, or impacting and merely cracking the armour. Cracking it. That's it. Their heads are so armoured that there is no space for eyes. Only when they raise their heads to strike, to bite, does the flesh of the jaw and throat become vulnerable. Even so, it is only for nanoseconds. Their huge claws are powerful, and I witnessed their lethality. One of Quintus's men, Hadrian I believe, lunges in too deep with his power claws. He expected the claws of the Tyranid to break under his weapon, but they did not. And one grabs him at the waist, raising him up before scissoring him in half. Power armour, like paper to these things. Quintus himself wields a two-handed power sword in great arcs, trying to batter down these guards of the Hive Tyrant. He is being kept back by it. Every time he swings, it blocks or evades, but always returns to its position, never advancing, never capitalizing on any openings. None of them do. They're the most centered beings I have ever seen. They take strikes that would cripple any other, just so they do not move out of position, never allowing even one gap in the wall between me, my men, and the Tyrant. It is now an impasse, a stalemate between the Tyrant Guard and the Vanguard veterans. Alas, it is one that is broken by the actions of the Hive Tyrant. He summons his psychic might and begins to assault the men in front of him with the foul powers of the warp. Trebonius falls to the ground clutching his head, but is then stepped on by the guard before him. His head scissored off for good measure, but the guard does not help its embattled friends. It merely returns to its quadrant. This is not going well.
Quintus, pull back. The ruse has failed. Let Marcus have a crack at it. Aye!
Bellows Quintus, as he immediately takes a step back, then another. Again, the Tyrant Guard do not charge them, sensing weakness. Any animal would have done so. They merely stand there, immovable. Marcus and his Sturgarn veterans take up the baton, as the jump packs on the Vanguard veterans flare again and they bounce back to our lines, in the areas cleared by their assault intercessors, who are now backing away from the enemy, firing orderly bolt pistol rounds and retreating, pulling back to our lines. Plasma and crack missiles fly towards the Tyrant and his guard. Those that would melt or annihilate the guards, or all of them, are stopped by the psychic shielding of the Tyrant. Anything else is let through. After a minute of this, I make the decision. Marcus has been no more successful. Of the dozen Tyrant Guard, there are over half left. After losing 2 of the veterans and 1 of the assault intercessors, I take stock of the terrain. Senses clearly show me that the Tyrant has been playing his own game, as we are being flanked and swept around. A huge force of gene stealers is making its way to our hindquarters.
Storm Ravens, extractions required, now!
Quintus lands near me and whirls.
We won't get another chance at this, sir.
Not Gaius. Sir. He indicates his perspective, then backs it up with the sir to signal he will do whatever I confirm. I indulge him with a response, knowing all can hear it.
The transports are taking off. The populace is on board. There are more battles. There are more fights. We lose this battle to prevent us from losing the war. We move.
And with that, the ravens arrive, and we board swiftly and leap into the air. Like a phantasm, I hear the tick, tick, tick of the grenade in my mind. There will be another time, another world, another battle. I swear, Tyrant, this is not over. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed the story so far, and will join us on the weekly entries as a result, and will like and subscribe. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.